Hello and welcome back to another episode of Tiksu to UniTartu. Today I'm joined by Yaroslav, and he is a PhD student here at the University of Tartu. Yaroslav, would you like to introduce yourself for us?
Yes, hi Vincent. My name is Yaroslav and I'm a third-year doctoral student at University of Tartu, and more specifically Haridus Institute, which stands for Institute of Educational Science. Yeah, so basically, as I said, I'm a PhD student, but at the same time, junior research fellow, which is now like politics for a university. So it's at the same time, I'm still like a student, but basically now it's more like a working position, and I feel it's more like working position. Yeah.
And what did you start out as doing your studies in bachelor's and master's, and what led you to this point?
My whole background is in Ukraine, so I come here in 2022, and I come here actually as an exchange doctoral student, and this is another like amazing opportunity that I wanted to highlight. It was Erasmus thing, Erasmus exchange. It was 10 months, yeah, and then after like half a year, my supervisor, Professor Margus Pedeste, we discussed that there is an opportunity to start my PhD here, and there was a new topic that maybe I will talk about in details later. Yeah, but my academic background was in psychology, so my bachelor and master was in psychology. But during my this university times, bachelor and master, I was interested into some group work, group psychological work, trainings, social training, psychological trainings. Yeah, so that was the moment where I decided that probably I should shift into educational science.
Yeah, and can you tell me a little bit more about why you chose the University of Tartu? You just mentioned this great opportunity you had with the Erasmus, but could you maybe expand on it a little bit?
Yeah, I was contacted by the university, but of course I applied for this opportunity. I was contacted, yeah, and one of the biggest reason was basically my supervisors. The second supervisor was Professor Katrin Sachs, and I basically, of course, I studied the list of topics, ideas, and works that people here that they are doing, and I was really amazed. And some of them, they really they resonated with what I thought about education overall, and what I thought is really interesting or might be interesting. Yes, so I think that people were the first reason. I knew something about Estonia already, but then I checked University of Tartu, and I mean pictures were really, really cool.
Yeah.
So everything else was also fine.
Oh, great. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you're specifically working on now and what you're doing at the University of Tartu?
Yeah, so basically now my PhD is something completely different from what I've been doing for all my life. Basically, it's like a new page, and I would say that it's more about learning analytics. So basically in Estonia, we have this interactive e-book called OPIC, which is basically an aggregator. That's a digital platform for interactive ebooks. And by interactive, I mean that there are plenty of functions or plenty of opportunities for interaction. Like besides the most obvious, like reading text, there are videos, pictures, exercises, tests, audio, etc., etc. And then basically we had a project in 2020, 2021, where the log data of interaction of more than 1,000 students over a study year was collected, and that's where my supervisor, Margus Pedeste, he stepped in. He was basically the project leader, but he decided to apply some new methods analyzing this data, not just some simple statistic like, okay, what's the average amount of time students spend, but he decided that probably, since the idea of the project was to see not if students need to use some new technologies, but how these technologies should be used in education. So that's why we decided that it would be interesting to see what are strategies that students apply. Yeah, so basically this is the main, like, let's say, framework.
Yeah. But sorry if I could cut you off.
Sure.
I'm kind of curious about those data points. Like, what kind of data are they collecting? Is it specifically students, how they use the portals, or?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. For example, like we have data. It's anonymized, so it's quite safe. On one hand, it's safe, but of course, on another one hand, it limits our possibilities to connect some results. Yeah. But basically, it's information of every action. If you play some video, I know that, okay, this student with this ID play this video at this point in this chapter in this book of this subject at this page, this video, and then basically after this video, this student might take a test, and then I see, okay, that some students, so basically the idea is to see what are the sequences of interaction. So some students prefer to start with reading, then go into gallery or to video, and then, for example, taking some tests. Another one, they start with tests and they spend all the session just doing tests. Some of them, they start with tests, then they go back to materials, and then again to tests. So the main idea of my PhD is that we should take into account this temporal dimension, so basically how learning unfolds over time. And the main goal is to understand and to develop methodology how to apply sequence analysis that I just described basically, and transition network analysis in this particular field. Basically.
Oh. And do you think your background in doing your bachelor's and master's in psychology has really helped you kind of, I guess, forward your knowledge with the PhD you're doing right now?
Absolutely not.
No, not at all.
Absolutely not, but it definitely helped me with some like other things. I would say that these soft skills or this thing that I don't like, but still, I mean, the knowledge probably. This psychological knowledge, definitely, I would call it like this life wisdom.
Yeah.
I think that, it definitely helped me a lot.
Yeah, definitely. So what inspired you to actually, step outside your field of psychology and start to do a doctoral degree? I mean, you mentioned the opportunity you had, but what was kind of the first thing that made you step into the field? And when you saw it, you're like, man, that looks pretty good.
I think that at some point I decided, because I really like this academic part of psychology. I really like doing these student researchers that I did. And they were quite different. For example, my first year, we had this, not the thesis work, but some academic work in the end of the first year. And in the end of the first year, it was about optical illusions, how people with different background perceive optical illusions. Yeah. And on my final year, it was about Afghanistan veterans PTSD support actually. So then I decided that, okay, I like more group work in psychology, but I really like to do science, and why not to combine it, and why not to shift into educational science?
Yeah, definitely. So outside of just, your studies and, well, still inside your studies, but I wanted to kind of just get your perspective on how it is being a PhD student at the University of Tartu. What's the workload like? How has it kind of affected your work-life balance?
I think overall it's amazing. Of course, there are up and downs, but still I reflected a lot about it. And I think that this different background that I have, it puts me into some like different perspective. And I think that the biggest privilege, but also at the same time, the biggest, I would say curse. The biggest curse is that you are the boss, you're your boss. You need to decide what you're doing, at what time, in what order, speaking about sequence. And I think that's not easy. And sometimes it's really exhausting, but at the same time, I think, speaking honestly, I believe that having a chance to regulate and to organize your working day is just an amazing privilege, as I said. So I think there were some really, really low points where I was basically very disappointed when something doesn't work, when some people don't correspond to my ideas, for example, in collaboration with other people. But also there were many these eureka moments where you found something is finally working, or something is finally resonate with other people. And so I think that mostly my experience is very, very positive.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned kind of, high points, low points. You get to manage your own day. What does your everyday look like?
Well, basically, it's very different, because one of the biggest, the most interesting things, and probably it's also my responsibility that I put it, that every year my working day looks really, really different. I can shortly say that the first year was more about learning. I was reading a lot. I was learning how to learn in this particular context, and I was learning how to write. And it was more about basically reading, learning. The second one was about where I finally had something, where I synthesized my own ideas. But then I really felt that I lack, some specific knowledge that I couldn't get just out of literature, and I need some people to collaborate with that are also experts. And that was my second year. I had my trip, 3 months trip to Italy, where I collaborated with was the head of Sequence Analysis Association in sociology. She was Professor Emanuela Strufolina. She's from another field, so it was amazing experience of collaboration. So the second year was more about working in some other projects, but also establishing connections, conferences, connections, this trip. So it was like this. And also it was finally about writing and building this methodology together. So it was, yeah. And now basically I have a lot of interviews, because I'm at the point where I want to ask teachers what do they think, and I want to involve teachers into this practice. So now it's a lot of planning interviews and like communication with teachers.
So you're going and talking to the lecturers and figuring out, you know, what works best for their students. Okay. Great. So what would you say is maybe the most difficult part? I'm touching on those low points again now, but the most difficult part of a PhD for you so far?
It's to get what you want from people, because sometimes when you need something, when you need some other people to collaborate with you, you need courage, and you need this I wouldn't call it self-confidence, but something you need courage to write to people, to find people, to touch with them, to write to them again, to if they are not interested, to find another people. So it's this never give up, basically, thing.
Yeah, I feel especially in the university space, you have to be pretty aggressive, because a lot of people have, you know, so many things on their plate.
Consistent, yeah.
And you need to be the, I guess, the squeaky wheel that gets oiled. Right? So if somebody were to come to Estonia to do a PhD, do you have any advice you would give them?
I think there are two questions here. In Estonia or like PhD in Estonia? Because
what do PhD in Estonia?
PhD in Estonia, okay. So we start with coming in Estonia before you come to university. Yeah, I think that's of course it depends on the field, definitely, but I've heard only positive comments about other fields. But let's say in my field, and I had also some experience with psychologists, very, very positive experience. I would say that you should have these skills of self-regulation skills.
Yeah.
You should understand that there are plenty of people that would help you, but you should tell them to help with what. So you should exactly know what you're doing. You should have a very clear idea of what you're doing, but you should be at the same time be flexible to change your perspective, and you should have this courage and motivation. And if you have it, as I said, there are plenty of people that would help you at the level of institution, at the level of country and government. There is a lot of support, but also at the level of just individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe just I know it's different levels of study, but have you noticed any big glaring differences from studying in Ukraine as compared to studying in Estonia? Just kind of how the structure is, and specifically what you're working, and you probably see it more hands-on. Yeah,
of course. I mean, there is a giant gap, and I think that people, the most, how can I summarize? It's very difficult to summarize it shortly, but I would say that people here, they are very, very open to new ideas, even if these ideas at the very, very early stage, even if they don't really seem to be maybe the most pragmatic ones or the most effective ones. But still, for example, whatever I share with my supervisor, some ideas that probably might not work, but he always supported me, and he always says, yeah, of course, go and try, go and do it, and you have my support. So I think this is the difference, because people here, they are not afraid to experiment, to try something new.
Yeah, awesome. And you tried something new coming to Estonia. That's going to lead me into our Estonian round, is what we've been calling it. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your experience in Estonia. So what's maybe one thing that you didn't expect when you came to Estonia?
I didn't really have some strong expectations, but so I was quite open. I think that one thing there was this stereotype. So there are two stereotypes that that I completely disagree with. The first one is about weather, that climate here is quite uncomfortable or hard, and the second one is about people, and there are many jokes. I like the jokes about Estonians.
Yeah.
Jokes are really, really funny. My favorite jokes is when maybe it's not so relevant now, but basically when there was this when COVID times ended, and when there was this 5-meter social distance, finally Estonians were happy that they can come back to their comfortable 10-meter social distance. I really like the jokes, but they don't. I don't see that they have anything common with reality. And I think that Estonians, they're very, very friendly and open, and even emotional people. I would say the thing is that their emotions, they are much more subtle than other people. And about climate, I really like the climate here. For example, now it's like probably the first hot day.
This is the first episode without my sweater because it's such a nice hot day here.
But actually, as you probably this winter, it was very comfortable. December was really, really warm, and then there were a couple of months of like absolutely normal, regular winter, and then spring started in March.
I love the snow. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
Yeah. And previous years it was. I think it's completely comfortable. It's not so hot in summer and it's not so cold in winter. I really, really like climate.
Yeah. Do you have any Estonian habits you've maybe picked up? You know, something you didn't do at home but you do here.
It's really hard to say what Estonian. I think I do have something. I think this facial expressions when you roll your eyes, like probably.
Yeah.
Or maybe some phrases, but yeah.
Yeah. For me, I've really adapted to the bags of like milk and sour cream and stuff. So I put everything in a cup.
Okay, maybe. Yeah.
I don't know if it's a habit, but it's something I picked up.
Maybe actually I like sauna more and more. Maybe I'm getting into the sauna culture more and more, because when I come here I wasn't really a big fan, but now I started enjoying it more and more.
Yeah. Have you gone out to the countryside, done sauna, out in the middle of nowhere, or done the lake plunge?
In Estonia,
well, just anywhere.
Yeah, and actually another thing is that I really, really, really like to go out of Tartu with my bike. I just bought it this year, and the infrastructure for bike. I've heard many good stories about Netherlands where these bike roads, they're everywhere. I don't know, I've never been there. But here it's super, super comfortable and cozy because it's safe both for you and both for like pedestrians. But you can go out of Tartu or Tallinn, for example, and there are this infrastructure, but there are also this Tartu Smart City bike options, so you can rent it. And you can go quite far out of the city, so it's amazing thing.
I always thought it's pretty cool around the city. They have those like bike repair kits set up around.
Yeah.
Those are like. I think somebody might just steal those tools in the US.
Yeah. Another thing probably that I see that running culture also develops and like grows. And there are so many these marathons, half marathons, trial marathon, and there is this ecosystem. And that's such a nice chance to meet new people. So if you actually now, if our listeners reflect, then there are so many places or opportunities where you can meet with Estonians, where you can get into this culture, so it's not a problem at all.
Absolutely. So looking a little bit ahead to the future, what's next for you, either personally or professionally? Where do you see yourself in the next few years?
Postdoc. Since it's the end of my third year, hopefully the next year will be the last one, and then I would really like to go somewhere else for a postdoc for a couple of years, but then of course to come back. Yeah, but I would really like to have this new chapter for this couple of years, both for my professional development, but also I really feel that for personal development, these trips, they're really, really beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, traveling is one of the most important things, I think, just to expand your mind in general. If you had any advice to somebody that's looking to come to the University of Tartu, not even necessarily PhD, what would you say to them? I
think that's a great place, and I think that you should do it. So if you hesitate, and if our podcast had a chance to persuade you, then maybe that's a sign that you should do it. Yeah, and that's really, really good place with amazing people.
Yeah, awesome. Absolutely. So we're going to close it off here. Do you have one last thing you'd like to say to the audience before we close it off?
Tere tulemast, which means you're welcome. And maybe that's like the first phrase that you hear, and you can be sure that you will hear it a lot here again.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to come
Thank
and
you
talk
for
to us.
inviting.
Yeah, thank you. And this has been Tiksu to UniTartu.